Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we have another brand new Mattel Jurassic World set to take a look at. Not technically a set, but there are 4 in this wave, so we'll call this whole thing a set of figures, as we have the smaller hidden hatchers from the Fierce Changers line, and I'm not too sold on these guys. I'm not too sure on them. They look very strange, as all of these figures have. The Fierce Changers as a whole just isn't something that has been working for me, and some people seem to like them, but I just haven't really been a big fan of them. But I'm so far into collecting them. I have all of them. I figured, why would I not just grab the final 4? I don't know if there are any more coming out after this, but these are the only other 4 that I didn't have, so I figured why not grab them and we'll take a look at them. They are a bit of a different style compared to the ones we've already taken a look at, so who knows, I guess. But they do look hideous to me here at first glance. You know, actually, technically, I guess they look okay. If you look at them from here up, they don't look half bad. They almost look like Snap Squads or something like that. But when you actually get a look at the bodies, that's where they start to become really ugly. So you can see we've got 4 different species in this line. We have a Velociraptor Blue, an Indominus Rex, a Dilophosaurus, and a Tyrannosaurus Rex. The packaging is nothing really super special. You can see they're kind of almost like Danger Pack style as far as the packaging goes. And then here on the back, it basically shows you, you've got 8 steps to kind of turn the figure from the dinosaur into the egg, and then again back from the egg to the dinosaur. So interesting, we'll put it that way. So I guess let's go ahead, we'll pop each of these out of the packaging and then we'll check them out from there. So there we go, we have all 4 now out of the packaging, and honestly they look pretty terrible. And I mean, they almost look even worse than I was expecting them to look, just because like the entire idea of the egg just, really is an eyesore. Takes so much away from the figures. They just look really goofy. The thing that I think I dislike the most about them, because, the sculpt and fine detail in certain areas is pretty decent, but if you look here on the front, you can see the arms of the dinosaur are held into the body. When you look at it from the side, it doesn't even look like it has arms. It does have arms, but they're in there. The only problem, though, is they're painted with the same color as the egg, so the dinosaur's arms almost look non-existent, which straight away, that's kind of the least of our worries when you look at them and they look like this. But, that's just something that kind of bothers me. I don't know what it is about that area, but the arms just look very, very bad to me. But even still, the fact that they're kind of attached to the eggs is also a little bit of an eyesore. But again, they're not meant to be incredible collector figures or anything like that. They're just goofy kid figures, stuff that I would imagine Mattel was not expecting adult collectors to even be interested in. They were probably mainly focusing these towards children, and kids like things that transform, so I can understand their mentality going into it. I can understand why they would create something like this, but I'm looking at this through the eyes of an adult collector, and I'm not such a big fan. Regardless, we're going to go ahead and jump straight to a closer look at all 4 of them right now. So we'll begin with, there we go, the Velociraptor Blue figure, and straight away I can say that I'm not a fan of this because the paint apps don't look very good. One of the key things for Velociraptor Blue is the blue stripe coming up and over the eye, but also running down under the eye. You can see we don't really have that going on. The paintwork runs like up there on the upper part of the head for some reason, so the paintwork straight out of the gate is not so great for the Velociraptor Blue. We also have a very black eye, nothing more than a black eye with a gloss coat, which is, again, not something that you see on Velociraptor Blue, so the eye looks pretty bad as well. The actual scale detail looks okay, it looks pretty decent for what it is, kind of what you would expect for a Mattel figure, but I would actually say maybe not quite as nice. You can see the blue stripe does come up here on this side, but it does end before the eye, which is exactly how it actually should. And then as you run down, you can see a little hint of the blue running down the neck, and then you can see it here on the body a little bit. Doesn't even reach the tail, but again, we have kind of like a speckling, which is like a Mattel trademark at this point. You do somehow, and I don't know how, but we have painted nails on these. Now, that's actually pretty funny to me because, I don't understand why we would paint the nails on something as hideous as this, but then we don't paint the nails of the figures in the main line. So that's a question I don't know that I'll ever have answered. But you can see again the nails also sport a gloss coat to them. The fine detail looks, I think, about as good as you're going to find for something like this as you move through. The fact that we have this light tone for the egg kind of gives it that appearance of having an alternate tone of color for the lower part of the body. You can see for the lower jaw as well as the underside of the tail. There is a little bit of articulation on the figure because you can actually move the head all the way back, which I would imagine that's probably something to do with the, transition into an egg. You can also open and articulate the jaw, which you can see we've got the teeth sculpted and painted in there. The inside of the mouth is also painted, given a nice realistic pinkish tone and a nice gloss coat. So that's at least a plus as far as the figure goes. I can appreciate the fact that you can open and articulate the jaw. The tail also moves up and down because, again, I would imagine this is all probably part of the transforming process. But as a whole, the Velociraptor Blue is probably my least favorite out of all four of these. There's just, really don't like it. It looks like an alien version of Velociraptor Blue. We've also got the Dilophosaurus, and the Dilophosaurus almost has kind of a cute appearance to him. He almost has like a kind of cute, grumpy look on his face, so I sort of dig that. I also like the coloration that we see in the frill of the Dilophosaurus. You can see we've got some really, really nice looking greens and reds out there on the frill. You can also see some reds up there on the crest, and then a green for the majority of the face. Again, just like Velociraptor Blue, we have the very dark black eyes here, and you only have a black and then a nice gloss coat. So not necessarily what you would see on a Jurassic World Dilophosaurus, but it looks okay. You again have the articulated jaw, which somehow looks even goofier when you open his mouth. You've got the teeth sculpted and painted in there. Again, very nicely textured tongue and the nice, very realistic looking pinkish tone with a gloss coat in there. And the jaw does work very smoothly, very nicely. So that's a plus. Same thing you're going to see over here. You can see we also have a light gray sort of tone for the lower jaw. And then, of course, the underside of the tail, which that would then be the color of the egg. As you move back, you can see we have more of that kind of like reddish tone there, or maroonish tone, designing along the back of the Dilophosaurus, but that's really about it when it comes to the paintwork outside of, yes, painted nails yet again. And unfortunately, like with the arms, you can see the arms are there, but there's just no paintwork on those at all. So we didn't get paintwork for the nails or anything of the arms, or paintwork of the arms in general. But again, the Dilophosaurus almost has kind of a cute look on his face, but at the same time, he almost kind of reminds me of the aliens from Fire in the Sky, if you've ever seen that movie. I don't know, he's just kind of weird looking, but at least a little bit better than the Velociraptor. Then we've got what I would think is probably my favorite from this entire wave of figures, which is the Indominus, because the Indominus actually kind of looks cool, but again, about as cool as it can possibly get for a figure like this. The eyes I'm not a big fan of, though. I wish we would have had a pupil. I don't know what Mattel's mentality is coming into these when it comes to the eyes just being one solid tone of color, because that's what we saw in the first two. Same thing we see with this one, but we have an orange eye rather than a black. But it does have a nice gloss coat. You can see there's a little bit of variation of color. We have the light gray for the majority of the body, but then we have kind of like this grayish brown that sort of very, very nicely runs through the face. So I can say that looks pretty nice. We've got the teeth painted with a yellowish tone, and of course, we can articulate the jaw. You can see the teeth look pretty decent for what they are, and the inside of the mouth has a nice light pinkish tone in there with a nice, again, gloss coat to the inside of the mouth. And the teeth are interlocking like you would expect to see on an Indominus. And of course, all of these, again, continue to have that articulation like you saw on the first figure. They all articulate the same way. But as you move back into the body, you can see some osteoderms and stuff moving along. You can also see some decent scale detail. And again, a little bit more of that variation of color we saw up there in the face. And yes, we have painted nails again somehow on the Indominus, which is just so strange that these figures would get the painting of the nails treatment, but most others don't. But the Indominus definitely, even though, again, the figures as a whole, not so great looking, the Indominus is actually at least kind of cool. And then we've got Rexy, or I guess that would be Rexy. We've got the T-Rex, and you can see It doesn't really look so much like a Jurassic Park or Jurassic World style T-Rex. You've got, again, almost that Snap Squad style look to it, I think. But you can see we, again, have the glossy black eyes like we saw in the first one. So the Indominus is the only one that had a different coloration for the eye. You do have a variation of brown for the face. You have a darker variation running up here along the top of the head. And then, of course, this kind of light tan sort of variation of a brown for the lower jaw. We do have an articulated jaw. And you can see, again, pretty much the same sort of tone of color that we've seen on the first two for the inside of the mouth. And again, a nice application of paint for the teeth with kind of like an off-white bordering on a light yellow. So, sculpt-wise, again, it's got some fine detail. It looks pretty decent. You can see there in the face, the actual detail does look pretty nice, and we have a lot of, kind of bumpy scales there, but it's not exactly what you would see on a Jurassic Park T-Rex. You do see a little more of that paint application here moving into the back with the dark browns. Nothing really going on out there on the tail except for the different tone of color for the underside, because, again, we have the egg area down there. And yes, we do, though, have painted nails, just like we have on all of these. So the T-Rex is pretty much just as the others are, kind of ugly. Well, actually really quite ugly, but almost a little bit sort of fun in the face area just because he looks so grumpy. And again, they all have that same sort of articulation. So I'm going to try to transform one of these really quickly, and then we'll check the actual egg part out. So here is the T-Rex now in egg form, I guess you could call it. And you can see it doesn't really look so much like an egg, but I get what they were trying to do. Definitely has a very strange look to it overall. And it was actually pretty easy to articulate if I can remember how to open it back up now. I don't remember how I did this. Hold on one second. There we go. We'll pop some of these parts open, and then we'll actually just go ahead and reassemble it back into the egg just to show you how it works. So basically what you do is you're going to flip the back here of the T-Rex so it's like that. Then you put the head and the tail up, I think. Yes, that's how it works. Then you bring these parts up, and you then start to kind of pop them together and connect them, and that's not in there all the way. Oh, I did that incorrectly. We got to put that in there first. Hold on. There is a method to how this works. There we go. You can see now that that's in there. And, I messed this part up too. Pop that open. So I guess you have to close the front part first. There we go. So now it's back into the egg. So it is pretty quick, pretty easy to do it. It definitely isn't quite as complicated as the other fierce changers are, which can take a little bit of time. And in some cases, like the T-Rex and Jeep, you actually probably need to watch the video to figure out how to do it. But these ones are almost self-explanatory. I didn't really rely on the instructions to do it. I just kind of tried it myself because I felt like it was easy enough. And it really is quite simple. As far as a size goes, we'll only measure one because they're all pretty much right there in the same size range. For a length, you are looking at about the 3.5 inch or 9 centimeter range, and height-wise, a little under, just shy of about 3 inches or about 7.5 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Dilophosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line, and you can see that these versions of the Fierce Changers are definitely quite small. I would almost say they're like the Attack Pack or Danger Pack size range for these figures, because there are numerous different size ranges to this line, and standing next to these other figures here, you can really quite easily see that they're pretty small. We've also got a comparison here next to a standard version of a Mattel Dilophosaurus and Velociraptor. We have the Dilophosaurus staring at Dilophosaurus in the face here, but you can see again roughly what the size is of these figures in comparison to like your standard Mattel Raptor size range. Then we've got a comparison next to one of the smaller versions of these Fierce Changers. Previously, these were the smallest ones out of all of the Fierce Changer figures, were the figures in this size range, and you can see again that the newer versions here, these smaller ones, are definitely the smallest of all of the Fierce Changers. And then when it comes to a comparison with the next size range up, here is the slightly larger versions of the Fierce Changers here in comparison next to the Hidden Hatchers. And then for one final comparison to really put into perspective the size of these figures, you have a Snap Squad version of the Baryonyx next to the Hidden Hatchers version of the Dilophosaurus, which you can see the Hidden Hatchers figures are a little bit bigger than your average Snap Squad. So these brand new Mattel Jurassic World Fierce Changers Hidden Hatchers figures are pretty much just like the rest of the Fierce Changers. An easy pass for most people. I, of course, bought them because, first of all, I'm unintelligent at times, and secondly, I also have all of the other Fierce Changers now at this point, and I figured why would I not at least grab the last 4 here and add those to my collection as well. They do kind of have a fun look to them in certain aspects, like, you know, when you take them into consideration as not being your standard kind of Mattel dinosaur figure. Like, they're just obviously meant to be very goofy, transforming dinosaur figures. You know, they're kind of okay. If these were made back in like the 80s or 90s, I feel like people probably would have liked them. But for what we have received from Mattel and kind of having this sort of sideline of figures, you know, there's just no comparison between the quality of what you get with a normal Mattel release and then these figures, these Fierce Changers. All of them look a little bit strange overall, especially Velociraptor Blue, who I think is the worst of all, but just generally each and every one of these figures look quite strange. The articulation aspect of them isn't so great, you know, there's only a little bit of articulation in the jaw, neck, and tail, and that's really about it. The paintwork is okay for what they are. Again, you really don't expect much paintwork on these figures, but somehow they have painted nails, so I guess that's a plus for them. But again, it's just pretty much okay as far as the paintwork goes. The fine detail is pretty decent, but I always expect that when it comes to Mattel. The transforming aspect when it comes to turning into an egg isn't so great. I could definitely see kids probably enjoying it just because it's something fun to do to kind of transform them back and forth, but as an adult collector, I don't really think it looks that great. So as a whole, these figures aren't the best thing in the world, and they're probably one of the least likable figures that Mattel has released, and that's not just specifically these Hidden Hatchers, I mean the Fierce Changers overall. They just haven't really been that great, and I know there hasn't been a massive fan base for them. There are fans for them, not everybody hates them, but I would say that the portion that dislikes them kind of outweighs the portion that does like them. I also think that these figures are quite a bit overpriced because it's like $7, I think like $6.99 for each of these, which I don't believe that these figures should be any more than $5, and even that's pushing it. But as a whole, again, like I said, definitely not the greatest thing that Mattel has released ever. But if you are interested in them, I found these at my local Walmart. So again, if you'd like to grab them for yourself, make sure you head to your local Walmart, try to pick them up there, and if they're not there now, they should be there soon. And also like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.